Well, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is a natural cycle of life.
Yes.
You say this in Grown Woman Talk, not a disease. And the hormonal changes during perimenopause are as significant as those in puberty and in pregnancy. So imagine going into puberty and not knowing anything about what's going to happen to your body, which a lot of us women did. Nobody had said anything about what a period is and what the hormones were going to do and all of that. And so many women are experiencing the same going into menopause because their doctors don't even know. There's a lack of an awareness and information from doctors. From what I've learned from you and other doctors, it's not even taught in medical school.
It used to be. And let me say, because, I'm in the old group of people. And, the study that really changed everything in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative, really did an about-face on the conversation about menopause. Because let me just say, women have been going through menopause for as long as we've been alive.
Yes.
The only thing that's changed historically is that more of us are living long enough to get to this phase of life. But women have complained about menopause forever. But it was thought to be, women just being hysterical with the symptoms, or you're losing your mind, or women would go to sanitariums at that point where, because of the mental illness and the distress that it caused women. But we have known how to treat the symptoms of menopause since 1942. That was when the first estrogen product was introduced. That was Premarin. And so women have been using hormones since 1942, those who had access and the awareness of it. But it really changed everything in 2002. In 2002.
Okay.
I was taught about menopause and what to do about it. And then from 2002 on, doctors who were trained didn't really get that information because...
Yes. Yeah, I was talking to doctors, Dr. Haver, who was saying she had an hour of training about it, a discussion about it, and was in another session that lasted 6 hours. So you come out of medical school with 7 hours of training. So since 2002, doctors have been trained about it. And obviously, so many doctors even, I think, are still confused about the Women's Health Initiative study done in 2002, which said, can you clear that up for us to understand what actually happened?
This
is one of the reasons. The reason why this is so important is because this 2002 study is the reason why so many people are afraid of hormone replacement therapy.
Exactly. In a nutshell, as I told you, 1942, we've been treating women who were symptomatic during menopause, typically the hot flashes and the mood swings, with an estrogen product. It worked. So as we sort of got more women who were taking hormones, we found that there were some tweaks that need to be made along the way, and added the progestin component to it. Because remember, estrogen and progestin go together.
Have to go together if you have a uterus. Yeah.
So we knew that it treated the symptoms of menopause. That wasn't new news. But what we found was that there was a nurses' study where they just looked at a group of healthy nurses, young women, and watched them through menopause. And what they found is that the women who took estrogen therapy or HRT had half the risk of heart disease than women who didn't, the nurses who didn't take hormones. So imagine, now the thought was, okay, we're not only relieving the symptoms, but we are actually decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disease by 50%. Well, that would be a blockbuster, right? But you couldn't prove it because it was just an observational study. So the Women's Health Initiative that was really initiated in 1991, the purpose of it was to sort of solidify that finding. Does hormone therapy really reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease by 50%? That was the central question. So we do a study, largest study ever in the history of NIH, specifically for women. So they recruited women in that study that were anywhere from 50 to 79 years old. The majority of the women, 90% of the women, were over age 55. So it's not surprising that when they looked at the women, they said, well, there's really no difference here. We don't see any improvement in the cardiovascular. It was like the same whether you took it or not, because they were starting it on women who were too old. So that was problem number one with the study design. The second part was that when they were looking, they said, well, let's have some safety stops. Let's make sure that women aren't having an increase in breast cancer because of this estrogen, because that was a thought.
This is the point that got everybody,
Exactly.
made everybody nuts.
So when they got to about 5 years in the study and they looked into the data to see how is this coming, there was this dramatic press conference that they held because not only did they not see the expected decrease in cardiovascular disease, but they saw a slight increased risk in breast cancer.
From these 60 to 79-year-old women.
Yeah, from these women who were on average 63 years old,
yes,
more than 10 years after menopause. So when you hold a press conference, and it's dramatic, and they stop the study, hold the presses, and they say, not only does hormone therapy not improve your cardiac profile, it increases the risk of breast cancer. And when they said that, I mean, women who were taking hormones happily
abandoned them
overnight.
Well, I would understand why.
Yes.
Because I remember I was doing the Oprah show when this happened, and it was a big announcement, and everybody's like, oh, that's it.
Exactly.
Hormone replacement therapy is dangerous. It causes cancer. And now what we're hearing, what I hear you saying, and I've heard other doctors say, this was a flawed study.
It was a very much misinterpreted study. Because if you had said, I don't disagree, okay, your data is your data. If you start women on hormone therapy later in life, you're not going to prevent their heart disease. I think that's probably true. The problem is that they generalize that data to everybody. Well, what about a 50-year-old? Well, what about if I start it when I'm 45, whenever I'm menopausal? Because that's when we clinically would start it.
Yes.
That's a very different outcome. And that was the misinterpretation of taking very limited findings and applying it to everyone.
But it became the narrative.
Yeah.
It became it's what people believe. It's the reason why my best friend still won't do an HRT because she's like, she wrote about her in the book, still won't do an HRT because she's like, I don't know, I think it causes cancer.
It has been, when you say the words breast cancer to women, I think that is their number one fear, is breast cancer, despite the fact that the number one cause of deaths in women is cardiovascular disease. It is more than all cancers combined and all accidental causes of death for women.
And do we know for sure that HRT, that hormone replacement therapy, helps now cardiovascular issues with women?
There is everything. When you take that same data, the largest study ever done, and you exclude the women who are older and only apply it to the women who are under 60.
Yes.
And within 10 years of menopause, guess what they find? The same findings that we had from the observational study, that the cumulative data says that if you start hormone therapy within 10 years of your last period or before age 60, you decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease by anywhere from 30 to 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.